Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to #PHVote. Today, we speak with one of the success stories that hopefully will show us there's hope. Leni Robredo, the new representative of the 3rd District of Camarines Sur. She won against opponent Nelly Villafuerte, member of the political dynasty that ruled the region since 1978. Leni is the widow of well-loved Naga City Mayor Jessie Robredo. She made a last-minute decision to run, partly because of public clamor after her husband's fatal plane crash in August. Good day. Thanks
day,
for
Maria.
joining us, Leni. It's so good
Thank
to
you
have
for
you in
having me.
Rappler. I'm going to start with a very broad question, which is, when I've watched you over the last months, I always wanted to understand how you saw power. I mean, you've been the wife of Jessie Robredo, been in local politics, and then watched him as a cabinet secretary. What's the perspective? What have you learned about the way power works in the Philippines?
Both my husband and I always looked at power as a means of changing a lot of things. But power also diminishes character. He was not anymore in command. But I guess after several months, he became adjusted to it. He became frustrated many times, but he understood that the nature of his work as secretary was already a lot different from being mayor of Naga. But he was always saying that it was more parang I forgot the exact words he would always tell me, but he was saying it was more parang rewarding. It was more rewarding when he would see immediate results of what he would do. When he would institute reforms in the DILG, he would often ask me, may patutunguhan ba ito? Because maraming proseso na pinagdadaanan, hindi siya tulad ng sa Naga na pag bumaha, hahanap ka ng resulta, makikita mo agad na next time it rains, hindi na babaha. Pero in the national level, it's a different world eh.
Yes.
When you institute this, you would have to wait a long time before you see results.
Yes.
Parang at first, it became frustrating for him. Hindi niya alam if tama yung ginagawa niya. Pero eventually, he became very hopeful that things will eventually work out well in the end. He always told me that it was very important for the country that we have a president who is not corrupt. He said it was the core of all the change that will happen to the country. So with that, palagay ko naman he died very hopeful.
I'm going to bring you back again because this was a fascinating time period to watch both your husband and our national government during the bus hostage crisis. Some of his friends actually had wondered why he didn't resign at that point in time because his wings were clipped. He was responsible, and yet he didn't have the power. The power wasn't given to him. What did you both go through during that time period?
It was a very difficult time, not only for him, but for the entire family. Most of us thought that the situation was very unfair, in the sense that people really didn't know how much power he had at that time. Most of us felt that resigning was the best thing to do. But my husband felt otherwise. Parang he felt that resigning would be cowardly. Resigning would be selfish. He said that he felt that he could do so much in the ILG, and he will work for as long as the president still wanted him to be at the helm of the ILG.
And then during that time period, he recommended sanctions against then Manila Mayor Alfredo Lim.
I was not very familiar with the report.
Okay.
But I knew that they came up with recommendations. Whatever those recommendations were, I was really not aware of the details of it.
Well, that stuck in my head because that was also part of the reason I wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal, watching it and watching the way it played out. Let me ask you then, after that time period, what made you decide to run?
Again, it was a very difficult time for us. We had a candidate already. It was the last day of filing of the certificates of candidacy. I was set to announce our official candidate for the Liberal Party for the 3rd District of Camarines Sur, our incumbent vice mayor. But then there was a struggle within the party. Another candidate filed.
Yes.
And the candidate who I was supposed to endorse wasn't very sure anymore if it would be the right thing to do. He announced, he made a press conference himself ahead of the one I scheduled, and announced that he was withdrawing, and he was encouraging me and encouraging people to force me into filing myself. At that time, I wasn't really given enough time to prepare, to make an intelligent decision. I went by instinct. I was even telling everyone that it was a leap of faith. At that time, I felt that it was the right thing to do. I prayed very hard, asking guidance from my husband. What would you want me to do? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? After 2 hours, I decided I would file. And when I started campaigning, I believe I made the right decision.
What did you learn about the Filipino voter?
Actually, a lot. I think politicians do not exactly understand that money is not the biggest motivational factor for people to vote for them. I was the classic example. I never gave away favors. I never dispensed favors. I didn't have money to run a campaign. I didn't have resources. I just had so many volunteers. Most of my campaign paraphernalia were donations. I wasn't able to mount a big rally because I didn't have money to do that. I didn't have money to rent sound systems and lights. I didn't have money to pay for transportation and food of so many people. All my meetings were done in street corners, under the tree, inside houses. I had small meetings, but I was very diligent. I worked very hard. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and ended my day at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, only to wake up again at 5, going around, making sure that I visit every sitio, every barangay, every zone. I think people are more concerned with how personal their relationship would be to the candidate. It is not really that important if they get something. What they need is hope. If you become accessible, people are more hopeful that you will be there to help them out. I think that's what made my campaign very successful. People saw me as a very accessible candidate. Everyone has my cell phone number. Everyone can text me anytime. Everyone can visit me anytime. I think if they can relate to you on such a personal level, they put so much premium on it. Other candidates would give groceries, would give money, would give everything. I never gave them anything, yet they still voted for me. I was telling people, I think if I win these elections, I would be giving a very strong message, not only to the people, but most of all to the politicians, that you don't really have to spend so much money trying to buy votes, because votes cannot really be bought. People receive money because they've been so used to it. People even wait for it. Days before the campaign, people are all over. Mm-hmm. It's like fiesta. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're out on the streets waiting for vote buyers. It's scandalous. But come election time, they still voted for me.
You won overwhelmingly, 80% of the
Almost
vote.
80%, yeah. 78.16, I think.
And in this one, you actually filed a case against Nelly Villafuerte
for vote buying.
For vote buying. Are you going to pursue this?
I am going to pursue this. I told my supporters because they warned me. When I told them that I'm filing a case, they warned me. They said, you should know these people already. If you file cases against them, they are gonna retaliate. And they'll be filing more cases against you. But I was telling them, it's time to send a message across. It's time to really tell people that we've had enough of this kind of politics. I'm going through the entire process. I filed cases in the proper forum. I didn't bring it to media.
We
And-
found it though. We did find it. But go ahead. You didn't bring it to media, and
I didn't bring it to media, but media was able to learn about it when I filed. But you know, I even refused to discuss details of it because I felt I did the right thing. I filed cases in the proper form. I went through the right procedure. I went to COMELEC. I went to the courts. When vote buying was being done in a very rampant and massive way, I kept badgering COMELEC, PNP, that this is happening here, this is happening there. We cannot allow you to just sit down and have these things happening in your midst and not do anything. Parang nabulabog namin lahat. We were in fact accused of using PNP and the military to harass. We didn't harass. We just asked them to catch vote buyers. I think it's about time that people would see you as a symbolic leader who will not tolerate this kind of things.
But is it possible? The biggest problem, of course, in the Philippines is that if you don't tolerate that, you're either targeted or more attacks come against you, which you actually have several. This is from at BYJU4991. What's your reaction to the Villafuertes allegation that you cheated them? I mean, does it work?
You know, I expected that. My husband has been running against them since 1992. I know how their minds work. I was expecting a deluge of cases against me when I filed a case against them. But then, if fear of retaliation would clip my wings, then the people would have nowhere else to go. I would have to be a symbol of change. I was telling our leaders were all against my filing. They were telling me that they would not stop at anything if they don't get back at you. But then again, I said, truth is my greatest weapon. I'm not afraid because I have not done anything wrong. But even if they do that to me, I am innocent of their charges, but I will not allow this tactics to still go on under my watch.
How bad was it?
It was really bad. I knew there were vote buying activities, but I didn't know that it was very institutionalized. They had 3 kinds of lists. The first list was people who were already their supporters. They would still be bought so that they won't change allegiances. The second list was people who are for the opponent. They would buy them in bigger amounts so that they called it vote conversion, so that they would change sides. And the third one were loyalty votes of the opponents. They would buy in bigger amounts, and they would just ask that they do not vote at all. And they were doing this in a very systematic manner. It seems they have been doing this for the longest time already. People were very aware of how they were doing it. It was happening in front of so many of us. So I was telling my people, I cannot just allow this to continue without doing anything.
Why do Filipinos allow it? The voters who were there, the voters who apparently supported you, I mean, why did they accept the money? Why did they allow it to happen without reporting it?
I think poverty is one. if you are given 300 pesos, that would mean 1 or 2 days food allowance. But our campaign was just get, even if you cannot campaign not to get, because people will still get.
Yes.
So we are telling them, if you get, do not allow that to tamper with your conscience.
This is what did you learn in running this campaign now? I mean, this is the first you ran with your husband for 6 campaigns.
Yes.
And in this one
I helped my husband in all his 6 campaigns. I actually get a leave of absence from work during campaign periods. I would run his campaign headquarters. I would be on top of his political organization. But then when I became a candidate myself, I found out that my husband's style of campaigning, my husband's formula for winning elections is so different from the formula of every other politician.
What do you mean?
Most politicians I know would organize from top to bottom, meaning they will get barangay leaders, the barangay leaders will get zone leaders, the zone leaders will get cluster heads and then household heads, and then they pay everyone. My husband never did that because we didn't have money. My husband organized the basic sectors, but not just during the campaign, but these basic sectors are actually empowered working sectors. And those who will emerge from them, those will be the leaders. So the organization was from ground to top. You don't have to spend for them because you relate to them, you engage them in such a way that your relationship lasts even after the elections. And when I first became a candidate, so many of my husband's friends came over to give me advice on how to organize, etc., etc. They were telling me, do not just bank on your husband's popularity because elections is really all about organizing. I realized that it was true. But the kind of organization they were suggesting was not the kind I was used to. At first, I planned on following all these advices, but then I wasn't very comfortable in all that. I decided to still go with my instinct and follow my husband's formula. And it proved to be the better formula.
You're modest. It also seems to be your formula. You started as a community organizer.
I am an alternative lawyer. I belong to an NGO. I worked there for 10 years. The NGO is called Saligan, Sentro ng Alternatibong Linga Panligal. We're a group of lawyers who organize the basic sectors purposely to empower them. For example, in Bicol, we translate legislations to the dialect so that people will know their rights. The main idea is if people are educated of their rights, they would be able to fight for their rights.
So bottom up is part of Leni Robredo.
Yes,
I mean, this is
yes,
part of who you
yes.
are. Let's move away from your husband. Who are you? What do you stand for? What makes you different?
I have always been a people person. For a very long time, I worked with the basic sectors: peasants, fisher folk, urban poor, labor, women and children. My orientation is really community organizing. I go around a lot. I go around the entire region. My realizations from that kind of work was that one would be very effective in helping if you really immerse yourself in these communities. If you give enough time and effort to listen to their plight, if you give enough time and effort to really feel what they are going through, that's when you are able to effectively help. I do not believe that a very theoretical approach would work. We have seen so much of that, and the kind of service that they gives us the impression that there seems to be a disconnect between government and people. I would always tell people it is important that I feel what you feel. it is important that I understand what you go through. So the kind of help that I give you would be the kind of help that you really need. For example, education. When you talk of education and you look at it from top to bottom, you only see more classrooms, more teachers. But from the ground, the problem is really access. So many children are walking 2 hours each day. And we are talking of 5, 6, 7-year-olds. They walk an hour, 2 hours each day just to reach school. And then so many do not complete the entire school year because of so much poverty, no food, etc., etc. So I was telling people, you talk about more classrooms, but first talk about accessibility. We can do with big class sizes, but each child should have a school nearby, so that we talk of free elementary and high school education. But if these schools are not accessible to children, they're still not free.
This is actually a question. There's a question on this at Nef Botor. What's your stand about K-12 Act, and how do you plan to improve delivery of education services in the district? And in conjunction with that, from at Jeff Crisostomo, what will be your priority bills? What's important to you now as Congresswoman Robredo?
I always told myself and the people around me that the first order of the day would be to legislate the initiatives my husband did at the DILG. He passed memorandum circulars and department orders instituting seal of good housekeeping, performance incentive funds, etc., etc.
Yes.
But these are just department orders. I think there is really a big need to institutionalize them, to legislate, so that whoever is there would have no other recourse but to implement. Right now, we give incentives to better performing LGUs, but there are no penalties for LGUs who do not comply with standards. So I think in order to push LGUs to excel, we really need legislations to require them to at least measure up to standards set by the government.
And why is the LGU important for you?
I think I believe that the LGU is the basic deliverer of basic services. So if they fail, there would really be as I have said, a disconnect between government and the people. We have rural health centers in each municipality, but these rural health centers do not even have the most basic facilities. They do not even have midwives who will give health services to the poor. It's just there. It's a building.
Yes. Your husband told me, when he took office, I said, so how are you going to stop corruption? And he actually said that the seal of good housekeeping is one of the ways. By making sure that the local governments deliver. Could you explain this? And then I guess once you explain that, how do you plan to turn it into legislation?
The seal of good housekeeping is actually a list. It's actually a scorecard of what the local government should be doing in their respective localities. It pushes local governments comply. Otherwise, they won't have access to certain funds.
The money, yes.
And I plan to do that with my PDAF. I want to transform it into a performance incentive fund, because I have seen so many discretionary funds put to waste because most of them are spent in vote-getting activities. But I remember what my husband often told me. He believed that people participation should be institutionalized. He believed in engaging all the stakeholders, because he said it does not only give voice to the underprivileged sectors, but it also keeps government on their toes. If you have spectators, you do not have any choice but to perform well. If you have spectators, you will always have to put your best foot forward. So he was always telling us, government should always be open to people participation, because that is the only way by which we will be forced to do good.
I'm going to go back to that, but there's so many questions coming in for you. And this is about your legislation, what's important to you. Again, from at Jeff Crisostomo, will you also file a Freedom of Information
Yes,
bill?
yes.
Why?
I think it is very important to institute accountability and transparency in government. If people have access to government records, government will be forced to do good, as I have said earlier.
Correct. From at Salian, since Bicol region is prone to experiencing typhoons, what are your contingency plans if ever the typhoon will hit Kamsur? Is this come
Not
under you?
anymore. For a very long time, Bicol was really the most typhoon-prone region. But because of climate change, it changed already. We don't get a lot of typhoons anymore. But before, when we used to have that, Naga was always in the forefront of all disaster preparedness activities.
And you were ready for?
Yes, for heavy floods, etc. Evacuation centers, agriculture.
When he was mayor of Naga, he received the Ramon Magsaysay
Yes.
Award, and you actually did do the one-stop shop. It was very efficient in
Yes.
Naga. Was he able to replicate this in the local government units?
I knew that he was able to introduce it. I knew that some local government units were able to copy most of the ordinances passed by the city. I just don't know how successful they were.
Yes. And then when you try to reform a system, the system fights back.
Yes.
How did it fight back, and what are you going to do now that you're continuing this fight?
You know, my model always would be what happened in Naga. There was so much resistance against the reforms being introduced by my husband. But over time, people realized that these reforms were really for the good of everyone. In fact, it came to a point when people would tell the city government, increase our taxes, increase market rentals, because they saw that government was performing well, government was responding very well to their needs. It was very important that they were very much engaged. When people are engaged, you get a more cooperative constituency. I think that was key to the success of my husband as mayor of Naga.
And a more educated one as
Yes.
well. And this is a question from our earlier discussion from Spitster 0877. Was your husband aware of this systematic vote buying in your district or even in your province?
He was aware that there was vote buying. I just don't know if he knew how systematic it was, because it was the first time it stared at me on my face. I was really shocked that I knew politicians would attempt to buy votes, but I didn't know it was that massive. I didn't know it was that systematic. I didn't know it was that organized. There were voters lists of people who would be getting. In fact, those lists looked like price lists of commodities. It was shocking.
Comelec and PPCRV actually give some explanation for why the vote buying may have escalated, because they said that in 2010, with the automated system, that instead of going retail vote buying the votes one by one, it shifted to wholesale buying barangays. And since
Yes.
they can't manipulate the PCOS data
Yes.
after it's in, they influence the
That's
vote
true.
before
That's
it comes
true.
in.
That's
So it may have been just these last 2 years that would have
I
escalated.
really don't know, because in Naga it wasn't that big. We were fully aware of politicians who would give groceries during meetings just to have people around, who would give 300 pesos to people just to get their votes. But I didn't know it was as worse as this one. I even called up Comelec. I was complaining, what are you doing? It's all over. And one Comelec official told me, okay, we will help you. Just make sure that you have it documented and that it's something that is being done continuously. So I said, how can you say that? Do it up with them.
So you mentioned that you would continue the case on
Yes,
vote buying.
yes.
It's symbolic to you, and
Yes.
it's, I guess, are you afraid?
No. I was even telling my children, if truth is on your side, you should not be afraid. If you know you are fighting for something that you think is right, you should not be afraid. Because, if we let fear overcome us, parang kawawa naman yung tao who are pinning their hopes on you.
In terms of change, again, this is an interesting time period for the Philippines. How difficult is it to change the system that's there? Vote buying, starting right off the top. I mean, it is something that's entrenched.
Ako sobrang hirap. Like, the ideal part of me would tell voters, do not get because that is immoral. But then, the reality is, even if I tell them that, they will still get. So you just tell people, okay, if you get, do not let that affect your votes. I think it will take politicians who will not be swayed by, parang the reaction kasi of some politicians, gagawin na din natin kasi ginagawa ng iba.
Correct.
If we don't do this, then
We're gonna lose. Yeah.
So I kept telling, even people I was allied with, I was telling them, we will not do it, we will not do that. Pero I don't really know if some of our people believed otherwise. Pero sinasabi ko sa kanila, you just wait for the results of the election. And if we win this, we will be able to prove a lot of things to people. Pero syempre, I was also afraid. Vote buying became so massive the week before the elections. I knew I had the numbers. If surveys would be believed, I knew I was going to win. But then when all these vote buying activities became very rampant, I wasn't so sure anymore. But I told myself that if this is going to be how it is, then this is not for me. Pero I also told my supporters, we just wait. Because if we win these elections, then we will be able to prove a lot of things to a lot of people.
We hope that continues. But let me ask you, if you are somebody,
Province is concerned.
In your province, the Villafuertes have been there for a
Since
very long time.
1978.
So grandfather and son and grandson ran. The two elders lost,
Yes.
including
The three
one-
elders.
The three elders. What does that show? Does it show anything? I mean, Migs Villafuerte is still the governor.
I think
now.
it was I think it was a big message that people has had enough of political dynasties. Mig's winning was, I think, a mixture of both hard work and luck. Luck in the sense that the third candidate for governor was not that prepared. Didn't have the resources, didn't have a lot of time to campaign. Migs was a fresh face. He had the Villafuerte family name, but he was fresh. And I think people are still hopeful. They rejected the dynasty, but this one, I think, is also a message that they're not closing their doors on everything. They're giving him a fair chance, and I think he needs all the support he could get.
My last question, Leni, is, and given the results of the election, the 2013 elections, what does it say about the state of our democracy today, the maturity of our voters? Where are we? How would you describe the Philippines today?
I think we're still far from the ideal. What I saw on the ground, a lot of what we don't like about politics still exists. We have had some good news in these elections. As I have said, the winning of Grace Poe. Her topping the senatorial elections is a big thing.
Unexpected. And
Some dynasties were already rejected, but we still have more. We remain hopeful, but I think we're still far from the ideal. Those of us who want change should continue fighting it out, should continue pushing for reforms. We could only hope to inspire more people to be with us in this fight. I always remember what my husband told me. And I have to remind myself that every once in a while. He said that so many people come into power with very clean intentions, with only very good plans in mind. But power really does have a way of corrupting people. Power really does have a way of changing people. So I was telling myself, after I was proclaimed, every day I have to remind myself not to be affected by all this. Because once I get affected, then the spark of hope that I get would again add to the hopelessness. So we can only hope that people who are in this fight would continue and will not be corrupted by the system.
Our hope is with you. Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Maria.
much. Thank you
Thank
for
you for
joining
having
us.
me.
We have been speaking with Leni Robredo, the new representative of the 3rd District of Camarines Sur. You can continue. Are you on Twitter or Facebook?
I am.
What's your Twitter handle?
Leni Robredo.
At Leni Robredo. You can continue to speak with her, ask her questions. She's very open. And please tag #PHVote. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us.